There is a new government tonight in South Korea. Park Chung Hee, who ruled the country for more than 18 years, is dead. The new government announced that President Park was killed by a shot fired accidentally by the head of South Korea's Central Intelligence Agency at a dinner party Friday night in downtown Seoul.
To say murder is justified is to claim that ethics is subordinate to gain. There is hardly a justification righteous enough to be a legitimate rationale for homicide. However, there is an exception. When the life and future of an entire country are endangered due to one person's authoritative rule, the grounds for counteraction are established. If the only method of saving these people tapers down to homicide, then it must be done for the sake of the greater good. Park Chung Hee, President of South Korea from 1961 to 1979, is the embodiment of this postulate. Park Chung Hee undoubtedly initiated and cultivated a prosperous beginning for South Korea. He implemented policies and reforms that were conducive to the nation's revival and set the country up for a radical modernization revolution. However, the impact of his power began to go awry as he advocated policies that were no longer applicable to a rapidly changing nation. He became corrupt and his methods violent. He was losing sight of what was beneficial for the country in his resoluteness. The signs of a harmful dictatorship were beginning to emerge. Hence, although the assassination of Park was ethically wrong, ironically in all other respects it was absolutely right. His assassination opened a door for the country. South Korea was able to proceed with what Park Chung Hee founded with the sole exception of his own authority. It could be said that his death was necessary for his legacy to continue. Park came to power in May of 1961 when he led a military group in a coup d'etat against the Second Republic of South Korea. Park was a former deputy commander and had extensive experience with military tactics. He quickly established himself as president and abolished any former political institutions. As he ruled, the South Korean government became progressively more centralized. After the inflicted devastation of the Korean War in the early 1950s, Korea was in critical condition. Its economy was failing and poverty was evident in every corner of the country. Consequently, after settling into office, Park immediately sought out his priorities. He believed that what the Korean people needed to flourish were two things: an education and an economic miracle. Education came first for President Park. He was known for his egalitarian views and often displayed this nature through his advocacy for accessible education. Park stressed equal opportunity in his reform policies. He also promoted education for all his constituents. Park believed the foundation to a booming economy was an educated citizenry. Not only did he seek to educate his people, but also searched for young Korean intellects living in foreign nations, asking them to return to South Korea to build their home country. He gathered these academics into think tanks that each concentrated on different subjects. Park then utilized these think tanks to obtain advice about his decisions and planning. To further stimulate the economy, Park fostered competition amongst domestic businesses and villages to prevent monopolies and to yield greater results. The groups that succeeded were given better resources to work with. This constant aggressive pressure Park exerted may have seemed extreme to some, but on the contrary, it was more of a motivational method that was imperative to the country's development.
What he really influenced on the Korean people was that the sort of a positive spirit in Korea is called the can-do spirit, okay? Because the Korean people back then in the 60s, they said, sort of, okay, we don't have a future. Okay, we're so poor, there's nothing we can do. But he was the person, first the leader, who sort of motivated people. He motivated the Korean citizens so that if we work hard, okay, the better tomorrow will be ours, okay? And actually that happened.
Park also designated special industrial and trade zones that focused on specific areas of development such as electricity. In addition, he established the Saemaul Undong, which was targeted towards helping Korean farmers maintain their agricultural businesses. Through such efforts, Park raised the nation's annual GNP growth by 8.4% and increased the domestic savings rate by 17.3%, both from 1972 to 1981. Japan, a relatively more modernized country who had annexed Korea 2 decades prior, was treading behind by 1.15% in annual GNP growth. Korea's recovery was an impressive feat for a country who had never experienced any form of significant economic prosperity and was suffering from destitution a decade earlier. Brutus, in the play Julius Caesar, defended his murder of Caesar with the following: "Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves than that Caesar were dead to live all free men? As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, I honor him. But as he was ambitious, I slew him." Brutus's monologue rings true of President Park Chung Hee as well, for Park became ruthless and irrational. His early efforts reflected his faith in the potential for Korea's eventual recovery and emergence into the international scene. But like Brutus's fear for Caesar, absolute power began to interfere with good intentions. Indeed, Park's regime eventually changed its course. The Korean people were getting increasingly upset with his frequent altering of the constitution to keep his presidency. More citizens started to protest with growing rage. Park in turn retaliated with his troops, who violently repressed the demonstrations. In 1975, Park issued a decree stating that criticisms toward the government were illegal and doing so would result in federal punishment. Evidently, he was becoming more paranoid and even went as far as saying that he would give the order to shoot demonstrators in order to maintain control. His original intention of advancing Korea was dissipating and being supplanted by an unhealthy obsession with command. His assassination addressed the problem.
Korea needed a more democratic government, the new leader, and I guess his disappearance from the political scene by this very tragic assassination was sort of inevitable.
Nevertheless, Park's relentless work is unmistakably apparent in South Korea and on a global scale today. The companies Samsung and LG are perfect examples of conglomerates, or chaebol in Korean, that Park fostered, who have emerged as leading forces in the international technology sector. The Korean education system that found its roots during Park's rule was at the top of the Pearson's Index ranking for cognitive skill and educational attainment for 2014. Park's investment in scientific institutions and research is reflected in Bloomberg's selection of South Korea as the most innovative country of last year. The Korean economy that Park had founded 50 years ago stands proudly as the 13th country in the world with the largest gross domestic product. And last but not least of his legacies is his own daughter, Park Chung Hee, who is the current president of South Korea. Park's daughter was elected as the first woman president in 2013 with high expectations of following in her father's footsteps and guiding the nation to see another era of economic prosperity. Still, things are easier said than done. Lately, it isn't the leader in South Korea who is causing the problems, but also the people themselves, especially the young. As living conditions and economic security have both significantly improved in South Korea, the country, like many other nations, is suffering from a lack of the can-do spirit that was so popular in Korea during Park's rule. This spirit accounted for everything Park Chung Hee was able to achieve.
The lesson that we as a youth learned that if you really work very hard, and then the outcome will be more positive, and then you can achieve a lot of things. So if you look at that, and then also if you look at what is happening now to the young people in Korea, there's a huge difference.
This willingness is startlingly absent from contemporary Korean society. Perhaps it is time for South Korea to look back at Park's insistent motto and together create a new sense of self-fulfillment. After the sacrifice of past generations in constructing today's modern South Korea, the younger generations ought to respect and incorporate this positive outlook into their own lives. Park Chung Hee and his assassination did not amount to nothing. It amounted to so many things that Korea is today. Without him, Korea would not have been modernized. However, with him, it would not have modernized as rapidly. Therefore, his passing is a major reason why Korea is now one of the top nations in the world. His death wasn't for naught because the lasting impact of his effort is visible everywhere in Korea today. His legacy lives on. Hence, what he started, the Korean people must strive to continue.
So I think that is the legacy he left. He made the people of Korea to believe in themselves.